Hello and welcome to Too Many Chair Shots, a live wrestling podcast with a 20-year delay. My name's Razorblog and I'm here with my good friend Mike.
Hi.
And we're going to be talking about 1996 WWF. Mike, why 1996 WWF?
It's 20 years ago.
It is.
And people tend to like round numbers, and 20 is a round number.
Excellent.
That's my default answer. The real answer is that it's a quite interesting time to be looking at the product that the WWF, WWE had at the time. At this point in September 96, Raw has done about 170 episodes, so they've been on Monday nights for about 3 years. But September 96 is a year since WCW Nitro premiered against them on a Monday night. So we're a year into the Monday Night Wars. We've had on both sides, we've had a couple of the keystone events that are going to affect the next sort of 5 years of business between both companies. So WCW have got Hogan back out of retirement. Hogan having left the WWE to not wrestle anymore, to go and make Thunder in Paradise, his TV show. And Eric Bischoff has eventually managed to coax him out of retirement to come and join WCW. That's not going great at the start of the year. People are a little bit sort of skeptical of Hogan. He was an old man at his peak at the end of the 80s. So he's sort of a slightly older man now. And people are just like, he's doing the same old shtick. What has happened in, I think, about April of 96 is that Scott Hall and Kevin Nash's contracts have come up for renewal, and Bischoff has managed to outprice Vince for their services. So you start to see...
May not come up later on in the show.
May indeed come up later. And he has now taken them on, and they start with an angle of that they're still with the WWE, but that they are now scoping out the talent, which, of course, eventually Vince is going to file suit against them, and they're going to have to say on air that they don't work for the WWE anymore.
There's some really strange games and gimmicks and works going on at this point in history before it's kind of widely known what to work on.
Yeah, the internet was not such a usable resource at the time. There were what were called dirt sheets, which had the sort of wrestling gossip. And I dare say there were some early online versions of that sort of BBS sites and things like that. But really, the majority of fans who are turning up to these tapings and to the live shows are not really as clued in as people today are, which is what makes the product then so much different to what it is now.
And actually what makes looking back at it, like, you know, with 20-year-old eyes, it gives you some interesting sort of double takes of some of the things that they did. And you have to kind of remind yourself, actually, they could have got away with this back then. Absolutely.
And the other main thing that's happened over the past year from sort of September 95 to September 96 is that the last of the key players for WWE's Attitude Era are all now in place at the WWE. So when you think of the Attitude Era, or when I think of it, I tend to think of the four stars who came to prominence for that. I mean, you think about people like Bret Hart, HBK, and The Undertaker were all stars or had started their ascendancy by the point that we're looking at it. Mm-hmm. But the four people I think of, the main ones are Austin, The Rock, Triple H, and Mick Foley. So just in 96, WWE, at the behest of Jim Ross, have finally signed Mick Foley, who has been suiciding himself every night with ECW. So those four people are now in place with the WWE. And it's going to be interesting to see how that build comes up. So I think it's even the next sort of 2 years of it is quite interesting to see the origins of these people that went on to become these defining sports entertainers, and looking at it quite minutely, because it's quite easy to remember. So I think next year is Mania 13.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a very famous match between Austin and Hart that night. I think it's easy to remember some of these big points, but it's looking in a more granular fashion at how they build it and just how they expect the audience to follow their story and how they expect them to get along with these characters.
Yeah, and it's also worth remembering that a lot of these characters don't yet resemble the people we know they're going to become. I mean, Triple H is still being called Hunter Hearst Helmsley. The Rock, obviously, is
Rocky Maivia.
Yeah, and he's not even on the scene as far as we've got.
He's still got curly hair and that strange teal and brown collar number.
Nice. Yes, the fashions here would definitely be something that's going to be reviewed.
Austin has transitioned from the Ringmaster to Stone Cold, and I think he's won the '96 King of the Ring. Mm-hmm. So they have started his push.
Yeah, he's the first one to really start and to resemble what he's going to ultimately turn into.
Yeah, I think looking at the story in smaller parts, I think it's going to be surprising that any of it got anywhere. I mean, particularly when we start with these episodes of Raw.
Indeed. And for those playing along at home, this is how the format of the show is going to work. We're going to be a bi-weekly podcast. For the first episode each month, we're going to look over the 4 weeks of Raw that preceded the pay-per-view, and then in the second show of the month, we're going to review the pay-per-view. And I will have to remind myself to call it Raw and not Raw is War, because it has yet to adopt that name.
Yeah, and it's at this point, Raw's format is still an hour long.
Indeed, which is why we can actually do 4 weeks in one show. So
we'll just start cutting out the Drek as we go, or only looking at the Drek as we go along.
Whichever's more entertaining.
Yeah.
So we start off with Raw 173, and I was really psyched to see this as the first show, because I was 12 years old the first time I saw this, and the British Bulldog, being the only British wrestler I knew at the time, was to me just absolutely, he had to win. He was the ultimate face, even when he wasn't a face. To me, he was. So the opening match of this Raw was Bulldog versus Owen Hart. And Bulldog looked in amazing shape. But having said that, that's because of all the steroids, which became blindingly obvious.
What I don't understand is why he has those bits of string tied around his arm. Am I supposed to think that if he doesn't have that tied around his bicep, he'd have one huge bicep? like the rope is holding him back.
Do you think that's what Owen Hart could have used to his advantage? He just pulled the strings and untied them, then
all the blood would rush from his head into his muscles, and he'd have just fallen over.
Oh, that would be a great angle. So, there is I'll let you go into it, but there is a larger theme happening on this show, which when it first started up, I was very confused because we were getting static, and I was thinking this is just a poor quality recording, and then we were getting static that the commentators were acknowledging as if it was happening for them too in the ring,
and curiously looked like. I mean, I'm old enough to remember what it was like having a vacuum TV, which would be susceptible to sort of RF interference.
Yeah.
It looked like no static I'd ever seen.
Yeah, no, it was so very strange.
It looked like someone was dialing it in from the production truck. They were just playing with some setting, but I'm sure that's not what was happening.
No, we may come to that later on. So it was a 3-person announce desk back then. I know you love 3-person announce desks.
It just never works.
And it really isn't working here either.
It's not working here either. Though it's good to see McMahon's early. I suppose he's been at it for quite a while now.
Yeah.
What I find interesting, I think we'll get into this towards in the next show, is the sort of he has to play a kind of schizophrenic kind of guy, because obviously Vince is the big backstage guy, and he's helping set where the company is going. But then he's playing surprise when things are happening on the show, which must be very tricky for him. And I'm not surprised that it comes off as a bit false, because once you realise with hindsight that of course he knew. I mean, I think JR and the King have often said that they stay away from the end of the booking of a match. They'll be involved in creative to know, especially JR, to know what he should push. But the endings they try and stay away from, just so that they can sell it a bit better.
Yeah.
But Vince is, like I say, this will come up a bit more in the pay-per-view, but Vince is having to sort of run this sort of two halves of Vince McMahon.
Yeah, and it's the point at which King is probably still transitioning from being a wrestler into being a caster. Yeah. He is really playing the heel gimmick up here, and it was immensely annoying, at least for me. JR is surprisingly nervous. Like, I don't mean he sounds nervous to be casting it. I mean, he hasn't got to that point yet where he's almost, invulnerable in the company. So he's still playing it safe.
But he's also third fiddle, because like McMahon's in charge. What happened? Because I looked specifically through these episodes at the Undertaker's storyline. This episode starts with a montage from the previous night's SummerSlam, which had a big Undertaker angle in it. JR is kind of third fiddle, because Vince is the big guy, but it's kind of not known. But whenever people during SummerSlam, when anyone didn't like the decision or something, they would start shouting at Vince, and Vince would be like, well, what do you expect me to do? As if to say, I just sit here and call the action. I'm not in charge. But they're starting. I think obviously he's been in court a few times on behalf of the WWE. So some of the more tuned in audience members do actually know that he's the head honcho. But it's strange to see it portrayed with the wrestler saying, "Oh, I'm complaining to the boss about this," when he's not really playing the boss.
Yeah, and it will come up later on in this episode how they actually use these 4 weeks to slowly transition McMahon off the desk and actually acknowledge that he's the CEO.
Because he's certainly been up in court on the steroid trial. I think he was indicted, but that was quite a few years before this. But yeah, it is. I think it is to some degree public knowledge that he's the big cheese.
Well, speaking of big cheeses in the wrestling world, or certainly the classic wrestling world, we've got Jim Cornette running around.
Yeah.
Which,
with his tennis racket.
With his tennis racket.
Wrong sport, you muppet.
I had forgotten how annoying this man is. Like, I thought, like, because he's a bit of a running meme in quite a lot of the wrestling online worlds, and I thought, they're kind of unfair to him, I seem to remember him being really likable. No. Just no. He is really annoying.
That is kind of his job, though. He's a heel manager. He's there to sort of...
I'm not really getting annoyed with him because he's a heel. I'm getting annoyed with him because he's not very good at it. Like, it's coming across really forced and really false. I mean, I know it's a silly thing to say about a wrestling show, but if you're coming across as really forced, even for a wrestling show, then there's something going wrong.
Yeah, I guess. But then, do you not think that some of the gimmicks like Doink the Clown are not a bit forced?
Oh, I absolutely do think Doink the Clown's a bit forced. What are you
supposed... Are they expecting you to believe that Doink is... Like, that during the week, during the day, Doink is doing kids' parties, and then he's wrestling at night for a few extra bucks? Because that's to me, that's the huge difference between WWE and WCW at this point, is that all the wrestlers, or a lot of the wrestlers in WWE, are very vocational based. They've all got jobs. Yeah. It seems strange. Like, I mean, people like IRS. Why is a taxman wrestling in his spare time?
Yeah, absolutely.
And if he's doing it for release, like, I mean, being a tax guy must be tricksy. Why is he bringing all that shtick to it? Why doesn't he wrestle as something else?
And interestingly, this is the point in time when they start to move away from the classic era gimmicks and start to move towards characters more like Hunter Hearst Helmsley.
Yeah,
and then of course they'll go full circle in in 20 years' time. But
well, yeah, they're gonna. I think part of that is Diesel and Razor leaving and becoming, well, not becoming, but being known as Scott Hall and Kevin Nash. I mean, they just sound like cool names anyway, but they are noticeably names in the way that Razor Ramon isn't a name.
Yeah.
Or isn't a realish name. And Big Daddy Cool is they're just words.
Yep. I couldn't agree more. The transition here is quite noticeable.
Sure.
So they're still using at this point in time the manager gimmick. And the whole point of the Bulldog Owen fight that the commentators are trying to get us to be annoyed with is that they're both run by the same manager, and therefore this is like a sort of almost like a friendly warm-up match.
Yeah.
Which is a kind of a difficult gimmick to get your head around at this point because, for us, the WWE, while it still has people accompany wrestlers to the ring, there really isn't this idea that they're actually all still territories being run by different managers and lending each other their superstars.
None of them has a manager's license anymore.
That comes up.
That someone asks Clarence Darrow at some point whether he's got a manager's license.
So Sonny, who at this point seems to manage basically anyone who hasn't got anyone else to manage them, shouts at JR and calls him Fatso and says, "You'll never make it in the WWE." Well, she says F, but that's just wonderfully ironic there, love.
I couldn't... So she's quite prevalent all through this month. I just couldn't look at her without thinking, oh, you're going to get fat and do porn. And it was kind of sad. I don't even mean it to be like putty down or laughy or funny.
It is just sad.
It's tragic because she's quite good at it. She's good at being this sort of conniving, body-obsessed, self-interest kind of little pernickety madam.
I thought it was interesting that she comes off strong and self-determining in 1996 when, admittedly, they are much more sort of sexist and misogynistic than... Yeah. But the current diva era, it's like she actually comes off as a stronger character than the quote-unquote divas.
It's because... But it is that. It's that the divas or the women wrestlers now are just who they are. They are Nikki Bella. They are Natalia. They are Becky Lynch. Whereas Sunny is a character and she has these things that she can play to and she doesn't have to do anything else. She can just... Because she's managing the Smoking Guns as well. And she can just be, oh, look at my hunky men who are going to trash you guys. And she doesn't have to have any sort of internal realism to that. She can just hammer home these character traits and that's job's done.
Yeah, absolutely. And she's not bad on the mic, so she's doing a job. So Owen and Bulldog go ahead and have I thought, pretty good match. I really enjoyed it. It was a technical, old school style, quite different from modern wrestling.
Exactly what I would have expected for them, having sort of trained together in the dungeon and everything. You would imagine this is the kind of good quality match they could put on without really trying. Yeah.
And at that point, I sort of sat back and thought, right, okay, we're going to just sit back and watch an hour of classic wrestling with some characters I remember, and that'll be fine. And then Mark Henry walks in.
Yay! He debuted the night before at SummerSlam.
I was just like, what is Mark Henry doing here?
For no apparent reason. I mean, they'd signed him, and he came out to sit and do commentary during a match between Jerry Lawler and Jake the Snake Roberts. So Jake is back in the WWE at this point, having got sober again.
Oh, and so they've aren't the WWE mullering him for
it? They immediately put him in an angle with Jerry Lawler, where Lawler is just calling him a drunk all the time. And their SummerSlam match culminated with, I assume, fake whiskey, but with Lawler pouring bottles of whiskey down Jake's throat, only for Mark Henry to step in and say, what are you doing?
Yeah, and they work
along.
this into a feud in that Lawler
Yeah.
comes out with this line that Jake the Snake is annoyed with Mark Henry because he wanted to carry on drinking it. I found it I had literally just finished watching the rehabilitation of Jake the Snake on Netflix,
Yeah.
and this was just like, oh, don't do that to this poor guy.
Yeah, I have also seen that documentary, and so I saw it recently. Like I saw it a couple of months ago, and yeah, I was just the same. Why are you doing this? Like, it's not getting King over as a heel because people are not sort of outraged at him. They just seem to be not disgusted, but just a bit disappointed.
Disappointed, yeah, absolutely. That's what I was feeling.
And it can't be easy for Jake to have this. This is all he can be now. That he's sobered up, but all he can be is this target for. Because it's about strength, it's about control of yourself, and it's about control of the way that you live. And the control is being taken away from him, and they are making a mockery of it. They're saying that he's not strong. They're making out that he's the weaker man.
Yeah.
For having done this incredibly hard thing.
I mean, I know it's going to come as a surprise to no one when we say WWE cheap creative, but you could have done a much better angle where he came back as an absolute monster and said, now I've conquered the demon bottle, I can conquer anyone, and really booked him as a great comeback, and then having him retire on a high. So
sadly not.
So Mark Henry was like 19 at this point. He looked really young.
He looks about the same age as he does now.
Yeah, that's really creepy. He hasn't aged.
It's interesting because that means it's been sort of 20 years he's been with the WWE.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Everyone goes on about the Undertaker's 20 years, 25 years of phenomenal. Where's Mark Henry's week-long special? In the bin.
So next up we have Vader versus, and now I'm just hoping I got this name down right, but Freddie Gibboni?
Something like that.
This was a total and utter squash, and zero fucks were given, I'm afraid.
No, I would totally agree, and we are going to see at least one more of those, either in the next one or the one after.
Am I missing something, though? What's the point of a squash match at this point in Vader's career? Everyone knows he's a huge monster. He's
just at SummerSlam the night before. He's gone the distance with Shawn Michaels, and Cornette has this line all month about how Vader beat him twice and still didn't win the championship. Well, he won on a disqualification and a count out, so that's not how you win the title. I don't know what test you have to do to get your manager's license, but it obviously doesn't even include the basics of how wrestling actually works.
Well, I want to know what you have to do to pass your commentator's license, because the lights flicker at this point, and the commentators start asking if WWF has paid its electricity bills. It's like, okay, so there's two things wrong here. One, you're asking if your own company is so cheap that they've not paid their electricity bills, and two, surely that's the stadium's job.
Yeah, exactly. It's like when they roll into town, they have to pay. They have to put all the 50p's in the meter when they start in the middle of the day. No, yeah, utterly ridiculous.
Yeah, and King will go on to do more like this. At one point during a match, he'll say he can't stand JR because he knows a lot about stuff.
How dare he?
Okay, so two things here were just, I was like, one of them was just I was so happy, and the other was I was just so confused, and neither of them I remembered quite as clearly. Mankind was just a phenomenal character. I'd forgotten how much I really loved that character. It's so
good to hear, like, peak era Mick doing that era of Mankind voice. It's so squeaky and pleading, and it's desperate, and it's really upsetting to hear.
It's really creepy, and I mean, compared to Bray Wyatt, which is way too polished to sound properly creepy. Oh, absolutely. It's really, it's kind of nasty, which I like.
The thing about Bray is that all of his sentences run together and they all make sense. But Mankind's got all these sort of non sequiturs in his promos, and even in ring when he's just sort of talking to himself. There's all these bits that go in there and they don't really make any sense at all.
Yeah, absolutely, and it somehow that makes it even better.
Yeah, absolutely. You buy into the fact that he's crazy.
Indeed. So then the Stalker turns up. I
Oh, he
mean,
was great. He was so good.
so at this point, I deliberately didn't look it up because I was just like, okay, I want to see if this is a one-off person or if he comes back again later, and he comes back again later.
Oh yes.
But I tell you what though, you was talking about Mankind's delivery and how good it is. Paul Bearer's voice. I mean, I knew it was funny, but I didn't realize it was that weird and just.
Yeah.
Why were you doing? Like, why would you? If you're pairing two supposedly supernatural evil characters with them, why would you? Do you think they deliberately had to make a funny sounding person in order to?
Well, Paul Bearer has always sounded like that. My bigger gripe again has been if you're getting a loved one buried, it's a sad time. It's difficult. Are you going to go with the sort of quiet, somber funeral home, or are you going to go to the funeral home with the guy that goes, "Oh yes"? I'm going to go with the somber guy because that guy's going to piss me off.
So you brought up a really good point about the whole angle they're working here with the Undertaker and how the commentators use and abuse it. Do you want to go into that now or come into it later?
So Mankind and Paul Bearer do this promo because the night before there's been an excellent match between Undertaker and Mankind. It's a boiler room match, so they start fighting in a boiler room. They eventually work their way out to the ring, and it's whoever can take the urn off Paul Bearer first is declared the winner. So what's great about this match, not only that it's this prototype for hardcore backstage action, during the segment in the boiler room is pre-recorded, and there is some bad static breakouts that cover a couple of cuts in the action, but the crucial thing isn't just the action that's going on between the two wrestlers. It's the fact that the commentators say nothing, that there is just silence, and it's this dark, gloomy atmosphere. It's really well lit. It's shot on not on a handheld camera, but whoever's got the shoulder cam is deliberately moving a bit too much. So it almost has this kind of Blair Witch quality to it. And once they eventually, and then as it becomes live, so once they get out of the boiler room into the backstage area, the commentators slowly start to add in more and more lines until eventually they get to the ring. It's a fantastic match. And what happens, it culminates when Undertaker and Mankind get to the ring, and Undertaker eventually gets into the ring where Paul Bearer is first, and he reaches for the urn, and Paul Bearer doesn't give it to him, and he turns away. And Mankind attacks him, and eventually you see Bearer give Mankind the urn, and they go off, and the commentary team are in shock. They can't believe that Paul Bearer has turned his back on all of his time with the Undertaker, that close bond. Presumably, all those years they worked together at the funeral parlor, and they just keep on about it. And then they leave the ring, and the Undertaker's body is just there, and all these and the lights start to go out, and there's smoke. All these druids come out, and they fetch up the body of the Undertaker, and they carry him away.
This is the first time we'd seen the druids, right?
I think it is. I think, yeah. So there's the match with Yoko. There's a casket match with Yokozuna a year or two earlier, where Yokozuna gets him in the casket, and then as the casket's going out, it sort of catches fire. But anyway, he starts to ascend. He appears on like the 3x3 TV monitor screen that they've got instead of one big screen, because they don't quite have the LCD technology yet to make a big enough one. And he appears on there, and his image starts to rise out the top of the screen, and actually the Undertaker starts to appear out of the top of the screen. So the Druids fetch him away at SummerSlam. And this episode of Raw started with a recap of the last night's action. So it has this match in it. It has the finish in it. And they go on about saying, "Oh, is the Undertaker dead? He's been betrayed by Paul Bearer. What about the Druids? What's happening?" And you're like, yeah, what is happening? Because the second I saw that, I'm like, right, well, I need to go back and watch SummerSlam then. So, and I was like, so I then watched SummerSlam, and then I started this episode of Raw again. I watched the intro again, and then almost the first words out of JR's mouth are, "Oh, the Undertaker will be back at in your house to wrestle Goldust." I'm like, you have just killed an entire angle with about 8 words.
Yeah, and I
Why?
wonder if they were just fed into his ear by Vince, just like
Why go to all the effort of having this huge build-up, of hiring druids, of, staging this amazing match, getting a really good balance between the reality of it and the atmosphere of it?
It's a waste of money. The Druid Union is notoriously expensive.
They probably just get jobbers to do it.
No, you think?
And so I was angry, because I was just like, why have you done this? Because why bother putting it in the VT package at the start of the episode if you're going to undercut it by trying to sell? I know you've got to sell the next pay-per-view because money, but don't do it like that.
I know, and I'm afraid they're going to keep doing that for basically the whole of this month, because there's a constant disconnect between what's going on in the ring and what the commentators say about that, and then what's going on with the thing as a television show.
Yeah, so, and then halfway, so Mankind and Paul Bearer are doing this promo where Bearer says he's got rid of the Undertaker because he's bored of him, he's tired of carrying him around, and Mankind is referring to him as Uncle Paul, which is brilliant.
Yeah.
And he says that he wants to ruin the lives of all Shawn Michaels fans when they meet at In Your House.
This is the other thing that I really pull up about this era. The feuds were really complicated and convoluted and overlapping each other.
This makes no sense. So they've had this hellacious match at SummerSlam. Now the Undertaker is going to wrestle Goldust for reasons that are not immediately clear, and don't really ever become clear at all. But also they tell you that it's a final curtain match, but nobody tells you what a final curtain match is. And it's going to take 4 weeks before someone actually says what a final curtain match is. And it is not worth waiting for.
Well, in that case, I think we better press on. Now, you mentioned Goldust. He was a complete WTF for me, because I actually happen to think that Dustin Rhodes is a really, really great wrestler, and he's really refreshing to see on the current product.
Yeah.
Man, had I forgotten where he came from. So the next up was Savio Vega versus Goldust versus Stone Cold versus Psycho Sid. Interesting 4-way. Because booking, because this is something about this era that really I still need to get my head around. Matches were made just for, this is a wrestling show and this is the card and this is how it's booked. And feuds happened in and around those matches. They didn't really motivate the reason for booking the match.
I don't know. I think it's 50-50. It's not entirely clear to me which way round it is. I'm not sure if they're trying to graft story onto matches or if they are trying to graft bits of story onto matches. Or did I say that the same way twice?
You pretty much said that twice, yeah.
Or whether they're just picking the matches that go with whatever loose story they've got. This in particular, I thought this is for somebody to go on and fight Shawn Michaels, isn't it?
I imagine so.
So it's the 4 of them to determine. Oh no, is it the Intercontinental title? Oh, I forget now. I haven't written it down.
There is an Intercontinental.
Tournament.
There is an Intercontinental tournament going on because earlier on, the current Intercontinental champion, who I immediately paid no attention to because I didn't recognize him, has been injured with a ruptured kidney thanks to Farouk. Or Skeletor, because you could be forgiven for thinking he was both.
It's like a blue gladiator.
I just don't even. So he's vacated the belt, which I didn't realize was happening back then. Like I thought the whole belt vacating was only a thing that they did these days to explain real injuries.
Well, Shawn Michaels is going to do it. He's going to vacate the world championship at some time soon. because he can no longer, because he loses his smile. That's right. He suffers a smile related injury in the ring or something. And anyway, he cuts this promo where he says he has to go and get back his smile. I remember it. I remember it when it was on, and I remember it being sort of dreadful. And just think, yeah.
So they go straight into this match for very little reason or explanation, other than that it somehow is determining the next either, I don't know if it's number one contender or the next guy who's going to get the Intercontinental Championship belt. But off they kick with Stone Cold coming out to the ring. He needed to get better music.
Yeah,
thankfully he did. But I was waiting for the big hit, and I was just like, oh, what's this? So he's not fully transformed into his final form, as it were. Did you get a total Dean Ambrose vibe off of Sid?
Sid's got this. Sid just confuses me for this whole sort of month.
Oh, good. It's not just me then.
He's got these really heelish tendencies. So remember that this is the late 90s. So he's got mental problems. Like, he talks to himself and he thinks he's the ruler of the universe. But he's completely over as a face. Everybody loves him and thinks he's great. And it's really interesting to try and work out how that's happened, because his hair alone is his hair looks like a sad pot noodle. It's really bad. So I like Sid. I like the intensity that he brings to his promos, and I like that he does like a good combo of his own stuff and some of Jake Roberts. So when Jake Roberts used to cut a promo, he would never really do any shouting. He would just be very quiet and cold and delivered, which is actually equally as effective as the other end of the spectrum, where you got Hogan shouting about vitamins and prayers and calling people names and that sort of thing. But yeah, they tip him out straight away, don't they? The three of them gang up on him.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, could he not go for any length of time? Because he's out within seconds.
I think they probably want him for something else.
Right, okay.
Would be my vibe.
That made him look really... That really cheap. Like, because I definitely got the idea that the crowd thought he was a face, and that's like tipping him out that quick just really made him look weak.
Yeah, they'd never do that these days. Like, kicking Daniel Bryan out in the middle of a rumble that everyone expects him to win.
Yep, some things don't change.
Yep.
Thankfully, some things do change, because man, Goldust did not look in good shape at this point.
He's
clearly really, really overweight, and they've put him inside this sort of like gold romper suit to try and hide it.
I think that what it is his weight is going up and down, so he must have a series, like a wardrobe of sort of gold body suits, and he's obviously had to step up a size, and so it's gone back to being a bit baggy. I think that's the thing we're going to see a lot of. It's going to go up, his weight is going to go up and down. Because certainly at some point he's going to leave WWF for a while, and he becomes like Black Rain or whatever that character was. And he's quite portly in that. So I think he's always had weight issues.
So the match is just getting going, and it's fairly interesting. It's okay. And then in the middle of the match, they go to a sponsor that cuts half the screen, and they go back over a previous match's feature. I mean, okay, it was amazing shooting star press, but it was bizarre, especially on a 4:3 resolution television. Like, they literally half the screen.
Yeah, I can't dissent from that. It's bizarre.
And they will do it every week for the next month at least.
And in the pay-per-view as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
You paid for that? Oh, for God's sake.
Oh, they're not going to do adverts in the pay-per-view, but what they're going to do is Vince is very keen on this double feature. And so whenever it happens, he has to call it by its name. And you're not sure what you're supposed to be looking at, because I've already seen moments ago what's happening in one half, but I can't really see what's going on in the current half either.
Mm-hmm. So King is going to go on about how someone gets Pearl Harbored, which is the first time. I mean, I've come across this term in subsequent years about other shows when they've looked back at wrestling, but it's not a good line. Like, where does that come from?
It comes from the Japanese
Well,
attacking Pearl
obviously, but I
Harbor.
mean, like, where did it suddenly seem like a good idea to use it
Uh,
in a flippant like pro wrestling show?
I've no idea, but I'm going to guess the American South.
Fair enough.
That seems about right.
The last thought I had about this match is like, how weird was it seeing Goldust go over better than Stone Cold?
Yeah, he's a bit more established, but
That's bizarre. Especially like, he's a comedy jobber now, and don't get me wrong, he's great at what he does. But yeah,
the weird thing about him having Marlene with him is that she smokes. Can't imagine seeing anyone smoke on TV at all anymore, let alone on WWE.
Yeah, I know. So next up, the last the main event, the last match on the card. WWE is doing its thing where it constantly over exaggerates itself. Now, in the modern era, they still do it, but at least they keep the over exaggeration specific, like Big Cass is over 7 feet tall, etc. But yep. Yokozuna is described as getting heavier every time someone talks about him. So he's introduced as being well over 500 pounds. As soon as JR gets him, he's over 600 pounds.
600 pounds, yeah. To the point where you wonder if they're cutting bits out where he's having like a huge roast dinner. These bits have been cut out for TV, but he stops every now and then to sort of devour craft services. And then back in the ring for another sweaty 2 minutes.
Speaking of ring spot from the night before, nice ring breaking as he's up on the turnbuckle. Quite like that.
And in the pre-show as well.
Yeah.
So they broke it in the pre-show, when that sort of thing you normally get at the end of a show.
Okay, so out comes HBK, and screw me, what the hell was he wearing? He's wearing clear plastic and black studded chaps and I don't know what, like village people outfit.
Yeah, but you've got to understand, he's either just been or is about to be in Playgirl, so he's this kind of sexy hard body.
I don't know. He looks like he's more likely going to be in, a men's interest magazine of specialist interest, shall we say? It's...
You mean what, like Model Aeroplanes?
Yeah, that's exactly what I mean.
That's what I thought.
Yeah. So yeah, just the state of that is ridiculous.
Yeah. The only other thing I had to say about anything on this episode of Raw, really, was just how sort of all over the place it was. I mean, it was nice to see a good compact hour with sort of 4 matches, 1 promo, and all done to a nice tight schedule, but just bonkers booking.
Yeah.
It really is all over the place.
Bonkers booking that they sabotaged. They actually deliberately sabotaged their own bonkers booking.
It doesn't even, like, why is Mankind fighting? What has Mankind done that makes him the number 1 contender over, like, because Vader has fought Michaels the night before. Does he not get a return match? Is that not how it works? Or it's certainly how it used to work.
And also, why is The Undertaker fighting Goldust? I mean, why is Goldust the top heel in your company? What's going on?
What is a final curtain match? they keep mentioning it. It must be exciting. That they're building tension.
They must be.
This episode of Raw got a 2.4, which I think is 2.4 million, and Nitro got
not 2.4 out of 10.
No, and Nitro got 3.7.
Ooh.
I can sort of see why.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because people at the time must have had the same experience that we've had. Even if they couldn't go back and see SummerSlam, if they maybe one of their friends said, I saw SummerSlam last night, it was great, you should watch Raw when it's on tonight.
Yeah.
If you just sat down to watch this, I can see why you would switch off. I can see why you would go somewhere else.
So, Raw 174, a week later, it's Monday night again, and we're kicking off with Triple H versus Psycho Sid. Except, of course, it's not Triple H, it's Hunter Hearst Helmsley, as we mentioned before.
He's coming to. This is in the glorious period where he's coming to the ring with, how to say this nicely, attractive looking women. There's going to be a long period where he's coming with China.
That's
And
true. But
as impressive as she is as a specimen, I have never found her attractive. So it's just nice to see. Nice because he had his, what do they call her, a valet. Which Mr. Perfect seems to have been repeatedly coming out and sort of whisking away.
Yeah, in a kind of creepy sort of, I'm abducting women, but they like it. I'm okay, WWE, sure.
Because what they keep showing is him coming out to ring and whispering something to him, and then them going away. I wonder if what he's whispering is, I've got your sister tied up in the back of the car. If you don't come with me, you'll never see her again. It is creepy that, and again, just portraying women badly. That any bloke can come up to them and whisper a few words in their ear, and they suddenly become dreamy and enraptured.
I know he's supposed to be Mr. Perfect, but Mr. Perfect, like being a perfect individual, a perfect athletic specimen, does not also mean that you've got strange mind control powers.
But he's stopped wrestling now, because this is after Brett has beat him for the Intercontinental title and he's had to retire because of injury. So
right, okay. I did wonder why he was only working outside the ring.
And wore a suit.
Yeah.
Strange looking suit. Yeah.
So, speaking of looking strange, where's the rest of Trips? I mean, he's tiny.
He is natural.
Were there no steroids available at this era?
Yeah.
I mean, I know these days he's a mountain of just bodybuilding.
He's back down to a more normal size now. There definitely was a point where he was.
Oh, he was huge in the late 90s, early noughties, but yeah.
You wonder if I mean the Bulldog at this point is not only jacked. I think this is his crack phase when him and Neidhart would be smoking crack outside of work.
Yeah.
So there is all sorts of chemical things going on inside of the Bulldog. But Trips just looks like he's a bit polished.
And he's playing a posh boy, which is ironic. Like he's playing a posh rich boy, and then later on he'll marry into being a posh rich boy.
So yeah, somewhat,
yeah, something like that. So on the WWE Network, I don't know if you noticed this, but there's a huge cut. Like there is some part of it has been chopped out, and it's not. It was just done arbitrarily. It's not. I don't know what that was. I don't know if you can remember.
I even think that might have been at the time. They must have cut something either for length or just for content.
Right. So yeah, the only other thing I got about this match, other than it being standard fare that neither excited nor disappointed, is at one point a man in the crowd holds up a plastic kidney. It's just like, go on, that man. Just well done, that man.
Because there's going to be, all through these 4 episodes, as the Intercontinental tournament is going on to find out who's going to fight for the Intercontinental title. Ahmed Johnson, who is the guy who's vacated the belt,
right, that's right, yeah,
is doing these really oddly shot promos. So it's filmed basically to have just his face in the screen, and he's talking about, that guy Farouk, he beat me up and everything. But this week, in this week's one, they had an interview with his surgeon. And I was very pleased to see that his surgeon is a fine example of nominative determinism, because his surgeon is called Dr. Hackett.
Wow! Nice.
Get me Dr. Finecut, please.
We do like a bit of nominative determinism, don't we?
Definitely.
So next up is Stone Cold versus the Wild Man Mark Merrow. I was so pleased to see this guy back, because back in the day I loved High Flyers, and I'd forgotten about him. Like, I'd not forgotten about him, but I'd forgotten how much it's great fun to watch him. And a takeaway from this for me, Stone Cold has even less wrestling ability at this point in his career. He's just all punches and kicks.
I can see why they brought him in as a mechanic for the WWE. He's a really solid wrestler, but there's nothing really special going on. He's not quite developed a really nice moveset. And he is kind of in this match for Mero to go over with his ridiculous. JR called it by its real name and then obviously got told off and called it like the Marrow Salt or something, but it's called like a 5-star splash or something.
Shooting Star Splash.
Shooting Star Press.
Shooting Star Press, that's the one.
He was very good. I can't remember if this is before or after he's Johnny B. Bad in WCW. Probably after.
Probably after, yeah, I think so. I think that's probably where they took the Wildman name from, just to sort of keep the gimmicks slightly connected. So he comes out with Brian Pillman, who is on the mic being annoying. Says absolutely ridiculous things. So Mark Marrow and Stone Cold are trading punches. Marrow starts shouting about how they're demonstrating their technical ability.
Yep.
Either he's being wildly sarcastic or just had a pre-scripted line and didn't care what was going on in the ring at the time.
Well, they're certainly going to build Pillman up into being unhinged. It was really strange seeing him with Austin because they used to wrestle together as the Hollywood Blondes in WCW. So there is some history between them. But ultimately, they are going to build an angle between the two of them where they turn on each other.
Oh, okay.
And Pillman is kind of crazy. So, yeah, it was interesting to see what the dynamic was now. But you're completely right. He can't call a match for toffee.
So, interesting things in this that I thought were worth picking up. The mounting the ring for the 10 counts, for the 10 punches where the audience counts. I totally thought that was a thing that like Kurt Angle started with the feud with Stone Cold. Nope. Austin hits what looks like a botched atomic drop, but they all call it the stun gun.
Oh yeah, that's his ringmaster move, I think.
Oh, okay, right, fair enough. He finishes with a stunner that doesn't have a kick.
Yeah.
And that just it basically is an RKO, and it just didn't seem right.
Yeah, he sort of has to turn his back on his opponent to make it work, which seems like really bad sort of theory.
Yeah, it was, however, refreshing to hear nobody shout out of nowhere as soon as he hit it, so there we go. Finished with a ref bump and a DQ. That's not something you see these days.
No.
Quite like that. I've got a note here. Someone says foot action and makes it sound... it's actually the name of the segment, and it sounds like a complete innuendo.
Yeah.
We mentioned
foot action.
Yeah. We mentioned before heel Lawler with his just calling out Jake about drinking. Oh, Stop it now! It's awful.
Yeah.
Lawler makes a joke about the Olympics getting bombed. I'm just like, really?
Yeah.
Damn.
Well, you got to remember that's before even like the Oklahoma bombing, I think.
Yeah.
So domestic terrorism has not really come home to roost in America yet.
Then Lawler doubles down on the annoying by going into this awful segment with Mark Henry where no one Lawler doesn't want to fight him but keeps making out he wants to fight him. Henry says, I'm not a very good wrestler, I've not had any training, I can't fight you, and then decides to fight him anyway. It's like, talk about underselling your product. It doesn't make sense. Like, Mark Henry could just spark him out. They're telling you he's the world's strongest man. You could pick him up and chuck him into the audience.
Yeah, just kick him in the guts, mate. How much training do you need?
This whole angle is completely torpedoed because this is how he's signed to the WWE. He's just won a gold medal and he's signed to the WWE. And then they immediately follow it by making out that each of these wrestlers is signed to their manager and it's manager's crew versus manager's crew. It's like, you just said he's signed to the WWE.
Like some of them are independents working for WWE, and some of them are contractors working for
that would
Cornette.
Make kayfabe sense if they ever explained that, but they don't.
And rightly so. Who wants to drag wrestling down into sort of unionization? Nobody.
So next angle is Mankind versus Alex Porto, the Pug. I think they called him at one point. Okay.
Sure. That's this week's squash match.
Yeah, this is a total nothing match again. Again, why? Don't put Mankind in a squash match. He doesn't need it. Even if you're not a an ECW fan, like this guy's just gone toe to toe and beaten the Undertaker. He's established.
Yeah.
They talk about Kurt Angle in this, and I'm like, whoa, is it really this early that he starts coming in?
No.
They're talking about him from the context of the Olympics, though. Yeah. So, speaking of which, they then cut to a promo where they call it the Special Olympics and playing up the idea Sid's there.
Is it this episode or the next episode where they've got footage of Sid there?
It's tug of war with an elephant, yes.
That is fucking gold. I really hope whoever suggested that in the writing room got some kind of bonus or a pay rise. Like Vince comes in and says, we've got to do something to promote the Special Olympics. Like Sid in a tug of war with an elephant, but better. And he leaves and all the writers are like, we all fine with Sid in a tug of war with an elephant? Yeah, that sounds fine.
Great.
It's amazing. And it really works because even though they're trying to push him as a monster that can wrestle or can tug of war an elephant, which he can't because it's an elephant.
But it's all right though, because when some Special Olympians come to help him out,
but that's the point, is that they get the Special Olympics guys over by saying that they're just as qualified athletes to help in an athletic endeavour by helping Sid win a tug of war. If I hadn't mentioned it, with an elephant,
yeah.
it's
that one slip.
Brilliant.
Yeah,
I loved it.
And then, of course, it's ruined by the fact that Bob Backlund comes out and he's making Bob Backlund not great again. Why? He's better now on the mic than he was then. He calls it the WWWF so many times that Lawler has to actually call out.
But
did he say WWWF?
No, you're wrong.
Oh,
that's a reference.
Oh.
Yeah. Sorry.
So this is a counter promotion. I know there is a WWWF at the time, but...
I don't think they were still going at the same time, but I think it was. I'm not sure if it was WWWF, but certainly one of the wrestling territories I think had a triple W in it.
This is Worldwide Wrestling Federation was the
a World Wide Web.
The World Wide Web. I doubt that. So shout out to the woman who brings a rubber chicken in the audience, like
naturally.
That. Again. Audience, black and pink tie-dye t-shirts. I have a note here that I said these are so 90s and then remembered what era we're covering. Yeah, that's right.
I think the pink and black is because Hitman is off at the moment.
Okay.
And they're not sure if he's coming back.
See, I just remember having a pink and black tie-dye t-shirt in the 90s and thought it was just the thing.
I'm so glad we have that confession on tape.
Yeah. So...
tape, like I'm from the 90s.
Because it's the 90s. I see what you did there, sir.
Yeah.
So Iron Sheik announces he's from a great country, Tehran.
Yep.
That's
not a country.
Not a country. Never mind.
Capital of Iran.
Moving straight on. Goldust taking on HBK. HBK Sweet Chin Music has lost a lot now that everyone's doing it.
Yeah.
I mean, he does it better, but it's done by quite a lot of people
now.
Well,
Ziggler does it mainly.
Yeah. Well, there's super kicks, though. Quite a lot of people do super kicks.
Well, there's just a whole variety of kicks, though. Like an Enziguri is a kick, but that looks way worse.
Across the ring's side kick. That's.
But I mean, I can buy being kicked in the chin is going to knock you down. It's the sort of holding onto the rope, stamping your feet first that kind of breaks the illusion for me. Because, like, again, it's like with Austin turning his back on his enemy. Why are you making a big loud noise
telegraphing it?
Yeah, and that is likely to bring your opponent to his senses.
So I didn't know if you caught it, but at least on the network, the opening segment is the commentators are talking, so the camera's just staring at a pair of boobs for 30 seconds.
Yeah.
Of course, it's the 90s. Feels like the 80s, but there you go. HBK looking stupid as usual with his outfit. Did you notice he very clearly puts earplugs in before his fireworks go off and then takes them out again?
Yeah.
Obviously, do that for safety reasons because you're really near explosions, but kind of spoils the effect.
During this match with Goldust, the the Undertaker has they do the split screen, so the Undertaker can have like a 3-line promo on Goldust.
Yeah, please stop doing that. Please just stop doing those in-ring VTs.
But then the commentators say that they call back to last week when the Druids brought his body out and he came back to life. They then said that he had to go straight to the hospital. I
caught that. It's like, well, okay, so is he supernatural or isn't he?
But did the Druids just do a bad job resurrecting him?
you can't trust a Druid when it comes to needing a full-time medical professional.
But can he take them to trading standards or something? and did medical science learn anything from this recently revived man? I mean, he'd been dead for 15, 20 hours and he came back to life.
Have you been injured in a workplace Druid-related medical incident?
Have you got problems with Druids?
Oh, well, JR's certainly got problems because Lawler bigs up the whole Playgirl magazine thing and they show tastefully censored images from it. And then JR, just as the segment is closing out, rattles off this, no, it's only for adults. It's okay, I know you got to cover yourself, but he really did not sound like he approved.
Well, yeah. The other thing that JR contributed brilliantly was this was the start of the Diesel and Razor coming back.
His I've got some news on that. I've got sources or something.
Oh, yeah. So he's saying that they're coming back. And I feel like anyone that watched this episode was just even at the time, was a bit I'm not sure they are.
Yeah.
I don't think so. But it'd be interesting to see if they pick that up next week.
I immediately felt Goldust looks awful and his fat ass is clearly hanging out of that suit. And then he goes and does this backflip dismount from turnbuckle punches. I was like, whoa, okay, guy can still move that.
Just a bit of a tom on him.
The problem is I don't know if you caught the Botchamania moment right at the end where he's being flicked towards the turnbuckle so that he can be hit with a moonsault, and he just falls over, gets back up and carries on running. It's oops.
Yeah.
And then the match ends with a Mankind run-in that doesn't happen. Mankind runs down towards the ring, aborts the run-in, runs around the ring, gets in at the back after everyone's left, and
chases him off, sort of thing.
What was that for? Who is he feuding with? I mean, that's supposed to be HBK, but why? What's the motivation here? Yeah.
Why has he suddenly switched targets from The Undertaker to Shawn Michaels? Why has Shawn Michaels accepted this match?
Yeah. We mentioned earlier that next week, the segment that opens, Farouk looking like King Skeletor. What is that?
Yeah, it's just teal blue gladiator who I just don't. Why is he allowed to wear that helmet? It seems like that's cheating. If you've got a problem with Roman Reigns' bulletproof vest, you've definitely got a problem with Farouk's blue helmet. and there are many a man has had a problem with a blue helmet.
I'm not gonna go there. So Farouk kicks things off with Savio Vega, so he does turn up later on. You've just brought it up. How the hell is a plastic helmet legal in kayfabe? Yep. The people are putting in headshots that just aren't doing anything. And he's huge. I only really remember Farouk from the Acolyte Protection Agency. He's big compared to then.
He'll have come. So his history before wrestling is college football.
Right.
He's definitely one of the fitter of the wrestlers. It doesn't surprise me to see him a bit more jacked here.
Yep. So, King Lawler, again, not really the polished product that he will end up being on the mic. He goes on about how Sonny gets fan mail from Julia Roberts. Okay.
If you like.
Yeah. The 3 count is a 4 count. Did you clock that?
I saw this kind of a few times. I think it's that the refs throw themselves down a bit more.
Okay. So
them hitting the ground sounds like the first hit, but it's I find that's a consistent problem with this era.
So Sonny and Farouk have a point where they're surprised by Sid coming out to the ring, but his music hits 30 seconds before he comes out and before they act surprised. So it's like, well, did you have a moment of deafness?
Maybe they just thought it was a fuck up with the PA.
Could be. Sorry, go on.
JR refers to Sonny as a Jezebel and says that
yes, he does.
Says that she needs to be taken out to the woodshed.
Oh, yes.
Which seems to be kind of contradictory. You're at once both saying that she's a slutty kind of a girl, but also that you want to punish her.
I did not like that. That whole turn of phrase was just creepy. Yet another crack at Jake the Snake's drinking. That's 3 weeks in a row now. Nice, keep it classy.
Because they're not even having a match at the pay-per-view. No. Why? It's just for shits and giggles now.
It's starting to feel like Lawler's just doing it out of spite now. It's not even going to work.
No.
So next up, HBK being interviewed by a member of the Spanish announcers team, who is still on the Spanish announcers team. How awesome is that?
He's been that guy has always been there. He's like the caretaker in The Shining. He's just always been there.
I'm surprised that Trump didn't try and build a wall between the announcers tables with the Mexicans doing commentary. It's obviously pre-Donald Trump years. I still can't get over the fact Trump was in WWE.
I just can't get over the idea of Donald Trump.
Fair enough.
It seems too ridiculous for real life.
So we get like an improv promo from HBK. This I think is the point where they're starting to fade them out and they're starting to script the promos.
I think so, yeah.
I have to say, I'm starting to think the scripted promos are better.
It depends on the writing. At this point, it's okay because it's mainly Vince and Pat Patterson doing the writing,
right?
For the guys who need it. But when it gets up to being sort of 5 or 6 people, and one of those people is Vince Russo, it's not going to be as good. Definitely, what I was reminded of was how bad Bret Hart is at doing promos. You sort of think of him as being this excellent guy, but actually he is kind of the last of the old guard of people who were wrestlers in an age when people were sports entertainers.
Yeah.
So he can't cut promos. He's not really invested in all of the story side of stuff. His thing is that he's a wrestler and he comes to the ring and he wrestles.
Yep. The show ends kind of abruptly because JR again points out Playgirl's only for adults, and they actually cut him off midway through.
Yeah.
Which is, I say the show ends, sorry, the segment ends.
Yeah.
Next up, we've got Stalker versus TL Hopper. So Stalker is actually Barry Windham. He's come back from a run with WCW, and the whole Stalker thing was supposed to be like he goes hunting each time. And he was going to stalk and hunt Sable. And
they've been filming him in sort of dodgy swamps and marshes in camo.
And then they just did nothing with the gimmick, and he just stayed in the camo.
Yep.
And as it would happen, would go backwards and forwards between WCW and WWE, doing nothing with the gimmick.
Doing nothing with any of them.
Poor bugger.
It's just always been rubbish.
Yeah. You lose half the match because there's a Hart promo going on, as you mentioned earlier.
Yep.
Again, just stop doing that. King, just because at this point he can't stop, accuses Jerry Lawler's sources of being Jake the Snake Roberts lying in a gutter at 4 a.m.
Natch.
Classy.
Yeah.
JR has to read an apology about the whole Diesel Razor Ramon thing. And could he sound more like he was reading off a script and less bothered?
Less invested in it, no.
Yeah.
Like, he definitely doesn't want to do it, but because, like I was saying with the earlier shows, he's third fiddle.
Yeah.
So he kind of needs to do what he's told, in a way.
Yeah. So they win the match with the sloppiest superplex I've ever seen. But then obviously because JR's got the script in front of him, he calls it the perfect move for the perfect segue to Mr. Perfect. And they go on about how, like we mentioned earlier, he's stealing Triple H's girls. Okay.
Perfectly.
Yeah, perfect. So, it's Crush versus Freddie Joe Floyd. They do the whole thing where they go on about how all the managers are trying to poach each other's talent, and then they immediately say Henry's signed with the WWE.
Yep.
Well done. Perfect. The match finishes with a closed fist strike, which is
a heart punch.
Yeah, the heart punch, which is right in front of the ref's face.
Yep.
And
it's a finishing move though, so it's fine.
Oh, right, good, okay.
Because you get one warning for using a closed.
Oh, that's
fist.
true. Yeah, true.
So you can just, as long as Crush hasn't done it before in the match, just punch a guy in the heart.
Why not?
Because you might cause an arrest.
Yeah, that would. Yeah, that's not really thought out.
I just don't get what the folding the arm behind the head is. Nobody sold that bit of it.
No,
I don't know why he can't just punch them in the heart. I mean, if he's this big brutish guy, surely just a blow to the heart will do.
So I have a question: was that head tattoo real?
No.
Okay, good. We mentioned at the top of the show how WWE like to boast. This time around, they're putting down all the other TV shows on at the same time as them.
Obviously.
Nice. They're still doing that these days. They still go on about.
This particular episode of Raw scored a 2.0 against Nitro's 3.4.
Nice.
So, well done, WWE. Well done.
So, last match on the card is Salvatore Sincere.
Sincere. I've got Sincere written.
Sincere, yeah, why not? Versus The Undertaker. Hooray! So he's definitely back and back to life.
Fuck me. What a... this is this week's squash match. Everything else has been either gimmicks or just trying to advance stories. And out of the four squash matches across these 4 Raws, this is easily the best one. Yeah. Because it's not a proper squash match. The Undertaker lets him have some moves. And kind of I get that plays into his moveset. If you're the Undertaker, you have to let the other guy at least knock you down once or twice so that you can do the sit-up spot and things like that. But this guy looks way better with The Undertaker than he would have done with pretty much anyone else on the card. Absolutely. Or on the roster, rather.
And they keep bigging up how he's undefeated, but he's literally only just wrestled 2 matches at this point.
Yeah, I feel like we're not going to see him again either.
It's just, there doesn't seem to be a real need to do that.
The Undertaker bombs it down to the ring as well. It's like the quickest Undertaker entrance of all time. Even more so than when he had a motorcycle.
Do you think he just wanted to get it over and done with?
I just think, I don't know, maybe he wanted to show some vitality after he died and went to the hospital or something.
Yeah.
And again, they're really getting my hopes up with this talk of what the final curtain match is. And it sounds really exciting. I hope it's something really good. Yeah, and in this match they have the Goldust promo cutting in on the match and saying that he's been playing a lot of mind games with the Undertaker, but not that we fucking seen.
He's played zero mind. Not a single wrestler in a single feud at this point has played a mind game with anyone.
No. He mentions the final curtain stipulation and almost infers that there's some sort of laying a curtain down on your downed opponent. But I couldn't tell if that's part of his sort of Hollywood theatre kind of gimmick or whether it's actually that what you have to do. You have to drape the curtain over the opponent at the end
just
of it.
Sort of tucking them into bed.
I just wondered if we were going to get some inappropriate joke along sort of a golden shower curtain or something.
Oh.
Yeah.
Lovely.
See, I'm putting the attitude into this before it's even there.
That's it. Right there.
So the match was fine. I didn't need the promo and stop saying final curtain.
So, Raw 176, the final Raw before the pay-per-view in your house.
The go-home show.
Indeed.
Sponsored.
Oh, go on.
Sponsored by Tekken 2.
Yes,
which is a game I loved.
I
loved
did as
that
well, and boy, did that date both me and this show.
I was so pleased. I was like, oh yeah, Tekken 2. That's much better than what I'm watching. I should be playing Tekken 2.
That's probably not the effect they wanted, really.
Oh well.
Oh well. So we open with Jake, and he actually acknowledges he's fed up with or does he acknowledge, or does someone else acknowledge he's fed up with Lawler's jokes? I can't remember quite.
I have got an odd reference in here. So yeah, I think Lawler starts up with sort of drinky gags.
He charges down to the ring and tries to smack him one, and Lawler tries to hide, doesn't he?
Yeah. And at this point, it's those two and Kevin Kelly now on the booth. Vince has disappeared for a bit.
Well, Vince has now disappeared, ready for the whole JR fake Diesel and Razor Ramon.
I think so.
Thing.
But anyway, so yeah, JR and Lawler get to arguing. And Lawler says something about how drinking has made Roberts weak. And Lawler tells and JR tells him off. And then they have this weird exchange where Lawler says, but everyone knows that drugs make you weak. And JR says, of course they do. Now, they work in an industry that's awash with people taking drugs that make them stronger. That's
at this point, they have to be seen to be very anti-drugs. So
yeah, but they've got the Bulldog on show. It's blatant that people don't look like that. That's not what a normal person. That's not even what a normal muscular person looks like.
Also, English people don't look like that when they go in the sun. That is a shade of mahogany that's not right.
Yeah, like nice try, guys, but maybe pick something you've got the moral high ground on, like sexism. No, maybe not.
No, maybe not.
Racism. No, perhaps not. Oh,
all right, so let's get inside the ring where it's slightly less controversial. Jake the Snake Roberts is fighting the Sultan.
Yep.
It's Rikishi!
Is it Rikishi?
It is Rikishi! I looked it up. It's Rikishi! And I was so happy to see Rikishi. I was just
the
like,
naughty
what
quiche
is
man.
He doing there? So he's the Sultan. He can't speak because he's had his tongue cut out.
Oh, yes.
Thankfully, we don't learn this through, nuanced performance and interesting segments about the character.
Somebody just mentions it in
JR King just tells us who he is, just gives us his entire backstory in like a complete, I'm reading a paragraph of script.
Totally.
It's just, really?
So at the moment, Rikishi, who is Samoan, he is wrestling as presumably some sort of Middle Eastern, Iranian kind of sultan. But you've also got Yokozuna on the roster, who is also Samoan, playing a Japanese guy.
Oh, I noticed that earlier. I meant to ask you, have you ever seen a non-Sultan do this? Non-Sultan. What am I talking about? A non-Samoan use the Samoan drop? Because he uses it. And for a moment, I was like, but isn't he Japanese? And I looked it up and went, oh, no, he's not. He's Samoan.
It's completely Samoan.
Yeah.
It's so bizarre. Like,
is the Iron Sheik even Iranian? I think he's American, isn't he?
He's
like American Iranian or something.
Because it seems like other than the wild Samoans, if you're Samoan, you're not allowed to be Samoan.
No.
Like, I get that. It's bad enough that the WWE sort of stereotypes every other nation on earth, and to be fair, they actually stereotype Americans quite well as well. But the fact that they sort of just essentially don't let Samoans be Samoans is very strange. And the only Samoans you can have are the sort of brutal, head-shrinking, people-eating wild Samoans.
Yep.
I just think it's weird.
Once again, 90s WWE is collecting isms.
Yeah.
So I would note here, Rikishi looks really slim.
Does?
Well, not really slim, but surprisingly slim for where we'll see him later on.
Yeah.
And Jake looks old, but he can really still go. Like, he still looks good in the ring.
When he throws out punches and stuff, he's still got that sort of bob and weave, razzle dazzle kind of violence, which I really like.
JR really overpushes his worked shoot that he's going to do soon, or is doing, or is, I don't know, is in progress at the time.
Yeah.
Every time they cut to Bob, is it Bob Buckland who's come down?
Yeah.
Every time they cut to him, he looks totally confused and gormless, like he's no idea where he is or what's going on.
Yeah.
And he speaks like he can't hear the other commentators. I'm not sure if maybe there's a
I think they're trying to portray him as this buffoon that thinks he's much cleverer than he actually is.
Okay.
There was some word, he kept misusing some word in one of his promos. I forget which word. But yeah, so I think there's a lot of that's what they're trying to get across. But then at the end of this match, when the Sultan's got him in the camel clutch, Backlund's having these sort of flashbacks because I think Backlund lost the world title to the Iron Sheik when the Iron Sheik put him in the camel clutch. So I think they're trying to get across that he's having flashbacks and that he's maybe beginning to realise that teaming up with the Iron Sheik was possibly not the greatest thing he could have done.
Wow, you got much more out of that than I did.
Yeah.
I just thought he looked like he was not like didn't know the camera was on him or something.
I mean, he's an aged professional. You know, he's been in the business. It's unlikely that he would be freezing up like that.
That's what I thought. That's why I thought it was kind of strange.
Or that they would show it if he did.
Mm.
I mean, if you have a heart attack at the announce desk, they don't show that. So
yeah, wow. The one note I had on this whole match, it was a mess of angles. I couldn't tell if this was the JR's news angle, or if this was about King versus Jake the Snake, or if this was about Sultan Sheik angle. I had no idea, I detracted from the match. I was too busy trying to figure out what I was watching.
Well, you're just trying to take in too much information from too many storylines and try to assess a wrestling match.
Yeah, and the actual booking, there was no feud between the two people in the ring. All the other feuds were happening around it.
Yeah.
Very confusing.
Yeah.
So you mentioned them earlier on. It's the Smoking Guns.
Yay.
Versus the Holly Cousins. It's Billy Gunn and Hardcore Holly before they were.
Yeah.
I was quite pleased
before they were asses.
Before they were asses, yeah, quite.
Of various kinds.
Sonny seems to represent everyone.
Yep.
Sure, okay, fine. With a giant picture of herself?
That's a great spot. That spot is completely money. Having a huge picture, like forget Rusev and his stupid flag for whatever country they're pretending he's from. A humongous picture of herself above the ring. That's great. Yeah. She's probably got that big bit of whatever it is material. She's probably got that in a lockup now. She unfolds it. She unfolds it every now and then and just sort of looks at herself and go.
Yeah. Is it me, or has in the 4 weeks we've been watching this, Jim Cornette has put on a huge amount of weight? Did he just wear it well in the first episode? Because...
No, I think his bodysuit when he's doing his demonstration match, I think is padded out to make him look more muscular. I think the joke is supposed to be that it's padded to make him look muscular, but it just makes him look like he's a bit rotund.
King totally one-ups himself on making inappropriate references to Jake's drinking by having a dig at Nelson Mandela.
Naturally.
Okay, good.
Well, don't forget that Nelson Mandela's a terrorist.
Sure.
It's the important part of Nelson Mandela's life to remember is that having tried to get his way through terrorist actions with the ANC, actually it was years of learned thought and being a quiet, dignified statesman that got him what he wanted. It's an important lesson to remember in a world riddled with terrorism.
Yep, good point. Well made. I'm going to go back to...
That's not going to make it in.
I'm going to go back to shallow wrestling commentary now, because I'm going to note that Billy Gunn, ironically, looks really like Dolph Ziggler in this match.
Yeah.
Or Dolph Ziggler looks really like Billy Gunn in this era. Who knows? Right down to using the Famouser.
Yeah.
So next we've got Gorilla doing a piece, and something really big goes crash.
This is so good, with him at his desk in half of the screen, talking to a camera while there's a wrestling match going on that isn't being called on, so that him and JR can have a bit of a lover's tiff about it, because all this build-up is crazy. They're calling each other names. Monsoon is threatening him with sanctions. JR fights back, saying, "Oh,
I stand by my sources."
Yeah, all the years we've worked together, our friendship. Don't you believe in anything I'm saying? Oh dear me! And it's so blatantly not going to be Hall and Nash.
No, and it's blatantly. It's blatant that the pre-recorded piece is not matching up with, not quite matching up with what's being said at the desk. And
yeah,
you have 4 wrestling matches on your show, and half of one of them is lost because you're doing a segment.
Yeah,
I kind of think make Raw longer, and then I see what happens, and I say
that's
don't
why
make Raw longer.
That's why they're going to bump up the length of the episodes, is so they can spread everything out a bit. But then they're going to go way too far.
So we have the Wildman versus Owen Hart.
This is good.
This is excellent. We have the first display of chain mat wrestling that I've seen in the 4 weeks we've done this Raw review so far.
Yeah.
Commentators reference Tiger Woods. I don't think in '96 I knew who Tiger Woods was.
I think he was sort of coming to prominence at that time for golf rather than extra activities.
So they make the first reference to the fact that Gorilla isn't the actual boss and that Vincent McMahon is on this episode.
Yeah, that Gorilla is the commissioner or whatever it is. He signs up the matches, but Vince is more senior.
Yeah. So they mention that Mankind is the new face of fear. So we've gone Taker, Mankind, Taker, Kane, Taker. Now they're lining Wyatt to be the new face of fear. Does there always have to be a face of fear in the WWE? Is that
it's like the Defense Against the Dark Arts role in Harry Potter.
Right. Okay. Excellent. That's what I thought. Yeah. Once again, King encourages violence against Sable.
Yep.
Classy. Owen Hart is a face at this point, right? Because he's doing heelish moves.
He's doing this shtick with his fake cast, which is definitely heelish. But he is kind of on the Hart family side, and they are generally all faces.
Right.
So I think he's just the sort of he beat Brett at WrestleMania, or I want to say WrestleMania 10. They had a classic match then, and I think since then he's been sort of, they haven't quite managed to push him one way or the other. His style of behavior in the ring doesn't really suit being a face, but the crowd don't really want him to be a heel, because if he goes full heel, the natural thing is just to put him against Brett again. So yeah, because you can't have him go against a third party, because then if that third party is really waylaying him, Brett will need to come in, and then you've got a face coming in to save a heel, and it kind of doesn't make any sense. Not that seems to be a problem for the writing or booking at this point.
Yeah, it's all a bit confused. So the next bit of confusion from another Hart. We cut to Bret Hart's promo, recorded earlier. Obviously not in one take, because did you catch the fact that
so many cuts and wipes?
So many cuts, yeah. Just
like I was saying, he was always pretty shit on the mic, but can he really not even read out a scripted promo? And the real telltale is that, like with Ahmed Johnson's promos, they have filmed him really tightly, so somebody has got the piece of paper next to the camera so that he can just read it.
Yeah.
But can you? Yeah, and it was just poorly edited anyway, not just the cuts and everything. But they obviously cut down a longer promo into these shorter bits, because he could even only get takes on some of it that were good enough, and then it just didn't run together. It didn't have any flow to it, which wouldn't necessarily be a problem with the edits, but the fact that the actual syntax of what he's saying, he just comes across as being a bit sort of like he's got some sort of tick, like he's just jumping from thing to thing.
Yeah, it was really.
It's like they've tried to edit him to be like Mankind.
Yeah, which it really is not where Bret Hart needs to be.
No.
Okay, so we finish the match and we finish up the 4th week of Raw with we finished the match. Finished the evening with Farouk versus Sid. Skeletor's back, and
just before this match, was it during this match or just before match that they had a promo for their new Saturday morning show called Live Wire?
Oh yeah, right before this.
The only reason I bring it up is that the email address was misspelt on the title card. Yeah.
Nice.
And I just thought they just clearly don't give a fuck about the internet yet. It's some geeky thing that they know some of the dweebs in the audience like. So we'll have it because, we're a big company and we're going to make it look like we're cutting edge. But nobody bothers spell checking it on the title cards or anything.
They do that in this match as well. They go on about how you can visit WWF online by going to wwf@aol.com. I mean...
I don't remember AOL working like that.
No, but... and also, they didn't even bother to get WWE, or at the time, WWF.com. They just had it at AOL. Really?
Well...
Maybe they got a CD in the post for some free internets.
It seems... it is like 20 years ago, and it is kind of even hard to remember, because the internet has become much more prevalent over time. I think you kind of lose track of what the very early internet was like. It's very curious that they seem to have their promotion is housed and promoted within AOL, as if they think that's how they think the internet is going to play out. There'll be these really big internet companies, and within their sort of domain, and I don't mean that like a top level domain, I mean within their remit, will be certain companies, and you'll vie for attention within that area, and people will subscribe to these different domains like you would subscribe to different TV channels. So if you want to see the WWF, you'll need to buy into AOL's kind of shtick, but if you want WCW, maybe you've got to go to Geocities or something.
Which ironically would go full circle and we'll end up with the WWE network.
Well, yeah, and so
$39.99
per month.
Yeah. So I have a note here.
I don't know why you're knocking them. If it wasn't for that, we would have a terrible problem doing it.
It's a very good point, well made. So I have a note here. Sid's punching sucks. It's like, I know these are worked punches and they don't look very good on whoever's throwing them, but
to me, it's the height difference.
Yeah.
I feel like if he was striking properly, he'd be striking down too much, and the chance of busting Farouk open by mistake would be too great.
Well, no, because he's protected by a plastic helmet.
Yeah, I feel like Sid could punch his way through that.
Yeah, quite possibly.
I buy him as a monster.
He looks really roidy in this. He looks more like bigger than he was in the first week we've covered.
He's sort of sweaty, sort of hairy, sort of roidy. He can't.
Can we have that as the show name, please? Sort of hairy, sort of sweaty, sort of roidy.
Too late. We've got like a Twitter and everything now.
Oh, dear me.
Too many chair shots.
Too many chair shots. Oh, we get our first chair shot in this match.
We do.
We actually take our first chair shot. Excellent. King makes the very same Jake's kidney joke that he made 4 weeks earlier. Just word for word. Like Vince was like, yeah, it didn't go over last time, so just let's try it again.
That's what they do with like Roman Reigns.
Yeah. Yep, truth.
Yep.
And then to top Bret Hart's lackluster promo, one segment earlier, Taker finishes off the show with an absolutely fantastic promo.
Yep.
I quite liked it.
Yeah, he had like 3 or 4 good lines, dark, moody. And finally, I was overjoyed. Kevin Kelly has explained what the final curtain stipulation is.
Hurrah!
It's amazing. You have to win by pinfall.
Oh.
So a no DQ match then. So what the fuck is all this final curtain bullshit about? It's just a no D. Don't call it that. Like the WWE has always had this problem. Why is it sometimes a no DQ match? Like, so no countouts, no DQs. So you got to win by pinfall. But sometimes they feel the need to gimmick name it. So this one's called the Final Curtain, presumably because that's an allusion both to sort of the final curtain on the stage. So it's a theatrical thing for Goldust, but also one faces the final curtain and death in The Undertaker. I get that. That's great. You could have done something more with it.
Yeah, just
you could have had some. The name's great, but then again, nobody's right. We'll call it a final curtain match. Do you want to make a special thing out of it? Oh, no DQs.
Why didn't they have it as like a ladder match where you have to pull a rope pull and it drops like a square curtain around the ring, and it just ends with like you above the curtain and your opponent lost behind it? Something like that.
That's a ridiculously stupid idea, but I still would have thought that was better.
Excellent, good. It took all of 3 seconds to think up.
Yeah, they did it with when JBL fought Finlay at one of the WrestleManias. They had the exact same thing. So there was no DQs, no countouts, but they called it like a Belfast brawl match or something. Because
they often have Texas Deep South street fights, which are just no DQ matches.
Yeah, but what I expect out of a street fight, particularly like I think the classic for me is either, it's definitely Goldust against Roddy Piper. The point of a street match or a street fight like that is that there's definitely going to be a wandering element to it. It's not just going to be in the ring. You're going to go backstage and you're going to go through the crowd. And in that case, you're going to drive off and another match will happen in between and then you'll come back and finish your match.
Yeah, but I want to say the last like 2 or 3 street matches that we've had in the current era have not done that. They have just been in the ring matches with maybe a weapon.
Well, that's just rubbish.
Yeah.
I only watch the pay-per-views now, by the way. I just can't watch Raw, can't watch SmackDown, especially now that they've got this brand split going on.
I know. I could just about find 3 hours in a week to watch Raw, to catch up on the storylines. I can't find 5 hours to watch.
Like, I'll read the show reviews on Reddit and get the story from that so that I understand what's going on at the pay-per-view. But I'm not sitting through, what is it, 6 or so hours?
5 hours. SmackDown's still 2 hours. So, assuming you don't watch, all the pre-shows and Heat and Livewire and all the Superstars and all the other things that are going on.
Yeah, just 5 hours of programming. I mean, the other great thing about this era is so at this time they have like the big 6 pay-per-views, but the other 6 are all sort of they're all called In Your House. So the big 6 are all 3 hours, but all the In Your Houses are 2 hours, and actually that's fine.
Yeah,
you get a good 6 or 7 matches in there. There's no fat to it. There's no need for a musical number in the middle.
There's still no need for musical numbers in the middle, even in the current era.
I don't mind bands playing out art.
Oh no, that's fine. By all means, have a live theme song thing, but just don't.
Especially if it's Motorhead, or it's not going to be Motorhead
anymore. It's not going to be Motorhead anymore. No, rest in peace.
2/3 off.
But I mean, just don't do things like cutting down Sting matches so you can fit in more musical numbers.
Yeah. Do you think, just to go off topic, as we have been talking about The Undertaker, do you think it's going to be Sting Undertaker at the next WrestleMania?
I don't think Sting can work anymore. I think Seth Rollins probably...
He turned up, he busted up Sting's shoulder. Sting turned up at some indie wrestling thing recently. So I'm not so sure that he's not... I'm not sure that he doesn't have one more big match
in him.
My main problem with it is that he's had 3 matches with WWE and they've all been losses. It's a bit of a cheat to ask him to come back for this dream match and have him lose again at WrestleMania. That's a bit. I think this would be a good match.
I think this would be a good match for him to win and Undertaker to retire on.
Yeah, that's how I would imagine it going down.
Or even just have the two of them wrestle each other to a standstill and then just end the match with them both sort of panting and no longer able to stand, and just eventually pull themselves up and shake hands and just acknowledge that the two of them were as good as each other.
I think that what they should do is they should do almost exactly that. They should fight on for ages, like a 60-man Iron Man match. They should fight for 60 minutes. and then one of them should climb to the top of a ladder, and they should pull a lever, and a big curtain will appear around the ring, and then when it comes back down, they've disappeared.
I think you might be mocking me, sir.
Yeah.
All right, so we're at the end of 4 weeks of Raw in 1996. What do we think? What's last takeaway sentence from this?
There are some seeds there that are going to be good. There are definitely talent on the roster. There's definitely talent in the writing, and there's definitely talent on the announce table. A lot needs to change though before they start getting to a good product.
Yeah.
And most of it is a case of trimming it down and just getting it more organized and getting it more sort of even if when Raw goes up to like 2 hours, it's going to be a case of they're going to be better organized with that 2 hours because they don't have to do so much on top of every other thing. So yeah, they've got somewhere to go. I don't think it's going to get any worse than this.
I would agree completely. I think at the moment what they've got is someone pointing a camera at a wrestling sideshow, like a wrestling event that the audience have turned up for, and
Sure.
then they've got commentators selling the next episode of television.
Yeah.
And the two do not meet.
Yeah.
And I think, I know we haven't got into the Attitude Era yet, so we're not really getting the good stuff, but at the moment, all this is doing is making me think that the current product is not as bad as I thought it was.
Yeah. I think definitely one of the other things I took away from this, JR still is already good. He knows the moves, he knows how to call a match. He's not quite got into this sort of more sort of studious relationship with the wrestlers where he knows a bit about their character and stuff, and I think that's partly because he's new. But it made me reflect on like the current commentary teams and how much I don't really like Michael Cole. And do you know what? I think Michael Cole is unlucky. I think that had Michael Cole been here at this point, and then JR had joined the company when Michael Cole did, I think we would see Michael Cole in a different light. I think we would see him as a perfectly competent announcer, able to give you the details of a match and to maybe add some colour. And then JR developed that and became much better with it, more involved, more invested, more emotional about it. But things being as they are, JR has set this incredible standard over his sort of 15 years of doing it, and Michael Cole comes nowhere near to that. And that's not necessarily Michael Cole's fault.
No,
but
that's a very fair way of looking at it, actually.
Yeah.
So, that's 4 weeks of 1996 WWE Raw. Next show, we will be bringing you WWE in your house. No one has played any mind games yet.
Complete absence of mind games.
Just, we have a name for the show. That's good.
Yeah.
See you later. That's basically what we got.
I wasn't sure if you were summing up the pay-per-view or us. There.
No,
we've got a name. And that was it. Enjoy.
Strangely, works both ways.
Yeah.
So, well, that was the first inaugural episode of Too Many Chair Shots. And you can find us and let us know what you thought about it on Twitter at ChairShotsShow. And that has been myself, Razorbuck, and Monsieur Mike.
Hello. Goodbye.
That's good night from me. It's good night from him. We'll see you again in 1996.
Take care. Laters. Bye. I'm going to do loads of these and you can just put in whichever one sounds best.
I just keep all of it.